goes. So I don't want you to get too far down that path and discover you've got to backtrack. But a couple weeks down the road, this will be where you start working. So I wanted to get through it this week as an introduction. One thing I will point out is we did this all on paper, and your group can certainly do it however you want, but it's probably going to be better to use a technology tool to do your flow charting than something like this. And for example, one place that I've used a lot, and they're actually in the process of rebranding. They were Draw.io, and now they're becoming diagrams.net. It's the same thing, but they're rebranding it. But Draw.io is a free online interactive tool that lets you create flowcharts. So they give you all the different shapes and symbols, and you can connect each one with arrows of different types, and you can label those arrows if it's a decision and so on. So all those kinds of things that go into a typical flowchart. And the nice thing is you can either save the files on your local computer, but you can also link Draw.io, I think either to Google or to Dropbox. So in your groups, if you have a way to share a Google file or share a Dropbox file, you can save your flowchart file to one of those two and share it. And then anybody in your group can open that file and it'll open up here. You can't have multiple people working on it at the same moment. It's not shareable in that context, but at least it would allow everybody in your group to kind of open up the flowchart and see what's going on and make adjustments and then save it, resave it. But for instance, one nice thing about this is that once you've connected two boxes with an arrow, if you move things around, it automatically adjusts the arrows so that things stay connected. I remember when I used to try to do this kind of stuff in Word or other drawing programs where you were just creating different things, and then every time you moved something, you had to readjust all of the connecting pieces. So things like this are nice. You can format the text, you can add colors, you can, do different kinds of arrows, but it constantly tries to readjust things as you move them around. So it's a nicer way. It takes a little getting used to when I've done things on this, that it's not perfect, but it's a whole lot better than trying to draw these things by hand and so on. So for down the road, this isn't the only tool that does this, but it is 100% free, and it is pretty established, so it works, and it kind of does everything you need to do as long as you're just doing kind of basic flow charting kinds of things. So I'm just throwing that out there. Draw.io, but like I said, they are changing. They're in the process of changing to, I think, diagrams.net or something like that. But if you go to Draw.io, it'll take you here too. So just as a potential tool to use when you get to that point. I can put a link on our Moodle. I didn't put one there, but I can put a link in our Moodle to get to that. Yeah, I mean, either way. But yeah, I'll add that to draw. I say EO. Some people say IO, Draw.io. But I've always said Draw.io. So yeah, the .io extension, you don't happen to know what the .io a couple of years ago, they expanded the internet extension possibilities. It used to be just .net, .com, .org, .gov. And a few years ago, they opened it up, and so that's now you've got other domain possibilities, and .io became one of those. I don't know if it officially stands for anything. I guess I could look it up, but
British Indian Ocean Territory.
Okay, so and this is what's happened is people have discovered that certain ones, even though they're for a specific thing, nobody regulates it and says, oh, if you're not Indian Ocean territories, you can't use it. People like it because I think IO, people think like input output or something like that, like it's an interactive thing.
The only one that's regulated is .eu. You have to be an actual. There's some level of verification. You can't just sign up for it.
Yeah, but even there, I think it's a pretty low threshold. Like I'm not sure there's a policing organization that's going to come after you if you're not. So, anyways. So anyway, so that's just something I wanted to point out there. So let's wrap things up. So really, what we have now is your games at this point. You should have your rough idea of what your game is going to be about. That was sort of the last week's discussion. So in those game project wiki pages, the first page here should just be quick description of topics you potentially discussed, what topic did you end up choosing, and just a very brief description of it, like a one-sentence description. But for the next week, the focus should be on those first two sections of the ID plan page, the analysis and the design, which is what we went through tonight. So that's just a matter of going into the editing of that page and deciding what's going to get typed in there. So use this. So this was in the game Moodle, which is it's parked in week 5, but I'm going to also put a link at the very top of our class Moodle so you can go straight there. But when you go into that group game project wiki, each group has a page. And then sub pages off of that are an ID page. There's a page for feedback from next week for your alpha testing, and then a link that takes you back to the home. So it's that group ID page where things should start getting filled in. Don't worry about the developing. That's the flow chart and the rules, and that's going to be the next thing after we've done the alpha testing. So that's going to be the main focus next week in terms of the game projects. The other piece of the homework, which is again designed to reinforce as you're thinking about your game design, is I've got forum number 9. Believe it or not, we're already up to number 9. For all your Beatles fans, hopefully somebody got that. So there is a forum, and what I would like you to do for the forum is to locate an educational game. And what I want to say is a game that is marketed as educational. Because what you may discover going through this is that something that's being marketed as an educational game may not actually truly be a game. So that is okay. That's sort of part of this. But so maybe there's something you've been using in your classroom or that you know that classrooms use in your school, or maybe it's just a matter of going out there. It could be an online game. It could be a physical game. It could be, anything. I'm not really limiting what the mode of the game is, as long as it's something that is intended to be educational and is intended to be a game. So take that, and you're basically in your post, just give a brief description of what the game is, what the goals are, which if it's an educational game, there should be some statement of what the game is trying to do. Take a look at it, and if they don't tell you, try to figure out what are the how are those instructional goals incorporated in the game, and then what is the fact is how does the fact that the game is educational affect the way the game was created? Did you see anything where they made the game work a certain way because it was supposed to be educational as opposed to just a game like Uno? So in the process of this, you may discover, and you can comment on this too, that the game actually doesn't really fit the full definition of a game. And you might talk about that too. I won't say what it was because they came up with it, but last night somebody threw out a game. They're like, oh, we do this all the time in our classrooms and call it a game, but it's really not, is it? So you may discover that, but that's okay too. So the purpose of this is just to start reinforcing your thinking about games, but in particular educational games, and sort of what is different or what do you notice that is specific to instructional games that may not necessarily be considered when you've got just any sort of a game. So that's an individual forum post, same thing, get the conversations going. By the way, you guys have been doing a great job. One of the best classes I've ever had, or groups of students, because it's been in both classes, in terms of having these discussions through these forums and keeping the discussions going and so on. So keep it up, because that's been awesome. So this is the individual piece for this coming week, and then the group piece is that working on the game basically the instructional design of the game. So it's the forum, and then working on that ID plan. However you want to do that. I mean, if your group is conversing through email or through chat or calling each other up on the phone or whatever, just have those conversations, figure out, who can actually type the stuff up in the wiki page. And then next week, this isn't really homework, but just be prepared that the main activity next week is that each group, each group is going to present to the whole class. It's going to be in smaller subgroupings. So like one person will stay to present their game to people who are from the other game groups. So it's going to be smaller little discussions. I think that tends to work better than a big full class discussion. So we'll do a couple of rounds. So you'll get a couple of different sets of feedback from individuals in other groups about your game. And then that's really the intent of that, is to really help you zero in on really feeling comfortable that the approach you're taking and the topic you've chosen and the way you're going with it is going to be effective, and maybe get some ideas about rules or guidelines for the way your game is going to work. All right? Questions? All right. So the recap for next week is that the 5:30 class doesn't have an online meeting, even synchronous or even asynchronous, but instead is moving to Wednesday night to start somewhere in the 6 to 6:30 range. This class will meet at 5 o'clock next Wednesday as normal to do the alpha testing. And when that's done, the two of you who are not in the other class can head on out, and the rest of us will stay and do the Moodle alpha testing. And all of that should be done by 8 o'clock at the latest. And then we get to go away for a couple of weeks because it's spring break. It seems early, but we don't get our spring break till quite a bit later. So, all right. Well, thank you all again. Thank you for your flexibility in shifting the timing tonight. It worked out. So thank you all, and I'll see you all next Wednesday.
You gotta go to the Moodle first.
Oh, you mean the
wait thing?
Oh,
yeah, I was. Yeah, I know.
Wait,
I was.
where are we? Not this week, last week, yeah.
I think it's in week 5. I'm going to put in fact, the link should already be there. Let me.
Yeah.
So you go here, and then we go here, and then you go here. Okay. Here's where we were having that discussion.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Yeah, so look.
While everybody's here, just so everyone knows that this is the case, at the top of our class wiki, in that header section, I just turned on. There's a shortcut link here that will take you to the wiki, so you don't have to go to remember that it's in week 4 and so on. So you should be able to click on this, and it'll take you right to the wiki, and that'll be parked at the top of the page from now on. So that'll be a little quicker to get to.
One thing we also